Good morning, my name is Tony Truscott. I'm one of our Service Design and Transition Managers here at Lamb Registry. I'm here today to give you a quick summary of design and transition function here at HM Lamb Registry. So to start off with, I'd like to give you some background around the emphasis of good IT service management best practice here at Lamb Registry. It's something that we've been practicing for a long time here. We were early adopters of what's called the ITIL framework, and that's the industry-wide recognised framework for service management best practice. It's something that we've adopted and adapted over the last 18 years. So what is IT service management? So IT service management is all about designing, delivering, managing and improving the way IT is used within the business, ensuring the right processes, people and technology are in place so that the organisation can meet its business goals. So such our level of service management maturity is that in 2011 we gained accreditation for ISO 20000, which is the internationally recognised best practice standard for IT service management. We're one of the first government bodies to gain that recognition. Further proof that we take service management very seriously is the fact that we are often used as a reference site. So companies from the private sector and public sector often come to us to learn about the service management journeys we've gone through and to learn all the good stuff that we've done in this arena. So just going to give you a quick overview of where design and transition sits in with the overall IT service management lifecycle. So starts off with service strategy here. So this is where we talk to the business and we understand the type of services that we need to add to our portfolio. Design is where we talk about those functional and non-functional requirements of the actual given service. Transition is all about putting building blocks in place to ensure that when those services go live, they do so in a controlled way. Then moving on to operations, this is about how we actually look after our services once they've gone live. And wrapping around it all is this ethos of continual service improvement. So where does design transition fit within the organisational structure of Lamb Registry? So the team itself is part of the DDAC group and it sits within our IT operations department. It's part of its delivery arm. The fact that it is in the operations side of the business does not stop it though from cross-pollinating right across DDAC. It's a very unique team that has defined touch points with solution groups, operations teams, business analysts, service owners, etc. So it has very close links to the business. The overall aim of the team is to provide assurance to the service manager that new services or significant changes to existing services are delivered to agreed value to the customers. So how do we do that? So I'm just going to touch on some of the approaches we take here. We use work packages to manage new services and changes to existing services. We often take a GDS approach to the life cycle. So much of our new digital portfolio services, they follow this GDS approach. We also use RUP approaches. So it might be that some of our more infrastructure-led changes kind of follow this RUP approach. A combination of both. We've coined some of our own phrases and come up with our own Lamb Registry approach here. What I'm going to talk about now is I'm going to just walk through some of these life cycle phases and explain the role that service design transition does at each different stage. So starting off at initiation, when the work package has been approved, that is when the service design transition go to work. They initiate all of the collaboration. So they play this conduit role of pulling all the necessary specialists together. At the early stage, they also identify any risks within the actual work package. They also start looking at ways of mitigating those risks. One of the key things that the design transition team do at this early stage and across all of the life cycles is around so-called non-functional or cross-functional requirements. So this is all about the kind of service management requirements, the service management wraparounds for a given service. So whereas the functional requirements focus on focus on what the actual service does. So when I press this button, the service does this. Non-functional requirements are all about how the service behaves. So it's looking at things like availability of the service. So how much availability does the service need? What are the capacity requirements of the service? How many users are going to be using the service at the same time? What are the support considerations of the service? So what are the kind of SLA targets for the given service? So service design transition is all about giving those non-functional requirements as much credence as the actual functional requirements. And to do this, they use something called the service management matrix. which is a collaborative document that's been pulled together by the team by talking to multiple stakeholders. So working across all of the service management processes to come up with a defined list of user epics and user stories that should be given due care and attention when we're designing new services. The document also looks at the criticality of the service itself and explains which of those considerations need to be mandatory or non-mandatory based on the actual business criticality of the given service. Moving on to design. So another key role that the team plays is around this idea of gateway control. So it puts control mechanisms in place to ensure that that governance is stuck to throughout and make sure that the process is complied with. So the actual project will not move to the next gateway until all of that governance has been agreed between the business, between the actual solution groups and ITO groups. So it carries forward all of those service management requirements into the design phase. And it also finally, before moving into transition, it works with the teams to agree transition plans. Moving into transition and delivery, it ensures that those transition plans have catered to all stakeholders. So this is a case of referring back to that service management matrix to make sure that all of those service management user stories have been considered. It looks at the defining success metrics for the given service. So what does success look like for the service? So it defines key metrics that can be measured to ensure so that we can actually say whether the actual implementation of a new service or transition has actually been successful or not. Another key responsibility, so at that go live stage, the service design transition team will take ownership of any outstanding risks and they'll move them onto our live operational risk register where they'll be managed by our senior management team and they'll be allocated to actual risk owners. Another very key role that the team plays is around early life support. So the team define what support will look like in those early stages of rolling out. It'll also define the criteria that says, right, once we've reached this stage, we can move away from that more closer kid gloves support model and move on to the BAU standard levels of support. So this is all about gaining acceptance from the customer that the actual service is performing the way it should be. So why do we do all these things? What are the benefits of this? So at this stage, I'm going to pull us back to our Land Registry values, our mission. So the team, the team epitomise everything about these Land Registry values. You know, we work to these values every day. One of the main ones that resonates greatly with the team is around we give assurance. That's basically our reason for existing, is to give assurance to the business that our new services can be supported thoroughly. Some other benefits here. The kind of foundations we put in place, the work we do in ensuring that all of our non-functional requirements are considered, help Land Registry to achieve certain KPIs. So take, for example, the external e-services availability target, 99.6%. That is only possible because of the thought and consideration we have given to actually designing the service and the support models that underpin those services. It also enables us to work on efficiency-saving services to help our casework community. So the support structures we put in place to underpin services such as workflow, again, help the business to achieve certain KPIs. The work we do also helps reduce costs through improved efficiency, so we can recycle a lot of what we do. So those support models we put together, we can recycle and use them again. And it gives us a better understanding of business risk, and it makes us talk about what are the consequences of business disruption or failure at the early life cycle stage. So all of the work is done. The main goal is to basically reduce the amount of rework that we're doing. So by giving all of those things due consideration at an early stage, it makes sure we've got a more stable service environment to support business change. So moving forward now, so the design transition function Land Registry has stood the test of time and it's held up well to a number of changes. But I think as we are a service management function, we need to give it that continual service improvement consideration, especially at this time when we're kind of rolling out a very ambitious digital agenda. So I like to take a very pragmatic approach to these things where I refer back to the 4 Ps of service design. So that's people, process, partners or suppliers and products. So I'm just going to touch on each of those areas and talk about some of the improvements I'd like to see us make. So starting up with the design and transition team itself. The team play a key role in underpinning the support mechanism of our new services. So it's vital that the team get the right training. So that's training in terms of service management, that's training in terms of the soft skills around negotiations, around decision making. I would like to see each member of the design and transition team actually shadow one of our caseworkers so that they can understand the pressures that the caseworkers are working to, and that when we come to actually pulling off the correct support model for the given service, they can actually provide intellectual challenge to make sure that the support offerings they're giving do actually meet the needs of the customer. I would like to see greater involvement of the service desk in the service design and transition function. So let's get the service desk involved early on in testing our new services. It's a great way for them to become experts in those services that ultimately they are going to be supporting after go live. Likewise, let's make use of that unique, holistic customer perspective that our service desk have and get them feeding that experience back to our developers, our DevOps teams, our Agile guys. Let's open up those lines of communication through things like Slack channels so that the service desk can feed input back at those early stages. Moving on to process. So, one of the things that's going to become more and more under the remit of the team is around service improvements. Having had a quick look at the process documentation for service improvements, there's definitely some room for improvement around the governance. There's definitely room for improvement around actually defining the role of design transition in the SIP process itself. So by doing that, it makes sure that all of those support considerations are duly considered in the growing number of SIPs that are out there. As picked up in the last ISO 20000 audit, we need to have a closer look at how we support beta services. So we need to conduct a review of how we actually put support mechanisms in place for our beta services, and we need to look to introduce consistent trigger points to say, right, at this stage we are moving away from kind of early life support into agreed business as usual support. And finally on process, something that's I'm quite passionate about is around introducing an improved standard communications process. So that as users of our service, they get a consistent user experience when new services are introduced. So we make use of all of our different means of communication through digital channels, use of video guides, etc. So that when we're adding new services, the user gets a high quality, consistent lines of communication each time. Moving on to partners or suppliers, there is scope for us to introduce measures to ensure more consistency to the supplier onboarding process. So it needs to be more of a two-way conversation between the suppliers and Elementary to make sure that we fully understand our suppliers' business continuity processes, for example. We need to understand their change management processes so that we're not caught off guard and see some of our services failing because of the behaviours of our suppliers. There's also scope to provide more consistency around the support interactions we offer our suppliers. So let's look to bundle up those interaction offerings and include them in the design phase. So it could be that we offer service management tool to service management tool interaction for use of APIs. It could be that we integrate via email mechanism, or it could be that we use a kind of more primitive phone approach. But by having those three things bundled up, it can create efficiencies and aid with those kind of supplier negotiation tools. Finally, moving on to products. So I'd like to see the design transition team work closer with the solution groups in terms of functional requirements. So let's look to get better integrated support mechanisms to give our users a seamless user experience. Something that's very hot in the service management arena at the moment is this concept of selfless service. So historically we've always built self-service portals where the consumer of the service comes to our portal, they find the relevant form, log their issue. Let's look to design our portals in more of a selfless way so that we've got the customer's best intentions at heart. So they don't have to move away from the service they're using. All of that kind of support integration was all integrated in the service that they're using. So we just offer them avenues to chat to our support agents or to link them directly to the relevant knowledge items or forms. Then finally, let's look to fully exploit the capabilities of our existing service management tool. So let's look to improve consistencies around task management. Let's look to undertake a review of the potential of using the tool to improve resource costing estimates. That's the end of the product side of it, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And now, do you have any questions?